Hey, welcome back to the channel. I recently had the opportunity to chat with Josh and Ryan, also known on their very popular podcast, as well as their two Netflix docuseries as The Minimalists. But instead of talking about their journey to living with less, I was a little more curious about their take on finances. Both of these guys came from having six-figure plus jobs to letting go of absolutely everything, decreasing their income by like 90%, and then getting rid of tons of debt. These are two guys who have seen both sides of the coin, so to speak. Obviously, there are a ton of things more important in life than money, but there's just no getting around the fact that for most of us, financial independence is something that we're striving toward because of all of the things that come with it, like freedom and less stress and fewer sleepless nights, knowing that everything is taken care of. So in this video, I want to share 5 of the top principles that most resonated with me in this chat that I had with the Minimalist about how to find and achieve and maintain financial health. You can hear the full version of this chat over on my podcast, the Mind Your Home podcast. Thanks so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, but more about them a little bit later. Let's go ahead and dive in. Number 5 is to stop stealing from yourself. And this is the idea that every dollar that we spend toward impulse purchases or things that were not intentionally thought out is stealing from these buckets that could be going toward our future self. Things like inflation-proof investing for your retirement or for your future or for your kids' college or for the big lavish vacation that you would like to take somewhere down the road. You find that you have no retirement account and you're stuck in the same place year after year, not able to go on a vacation because you never seem to have the lump sum of funds to do so. But when you look around your space, all you see is clutter from the items that you've purchased over the past year instead.
I think what we tend to do is we borrow from our future. Quite often we want something, but we forsake the thing we truly want to get what we want right now, to get what we want in the moment. That impulse. So my future self is suffering for the decisions that I make today.
In my mid-20s, when I finally had a decent credit score and I could borrow money, every time I got a raise, it was all about what kind of payment could I afford now? I only live once, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. Like, that is just giving myself permission to make bad decisions. It comes down to priorities. If someone's priority is to live as fast as they can while they're as young as they'll ever be, and that's their true priority, then I say go for it. For me, my priorities have just changed over the last 13 years.
Number 4 is to automate your investments. So instead of relying on yourself to come around and do the math every month and automatically pull out all of your retirement savings and your different buckets that we talked about before, having those things automated before you even have the chance to see them is really key in order to stay on the path. Because when you don't see it, you don't think about it being there, and it makes you naturally budget around that amount accordingly. So you're saving, you're paying your future self first, and you're not missing the money.
We don't have to think about it. It's already out of our budget. And if we use that budget for our finances like the Bible during the month, we usually end up winning at the end of the month.
Automating your savings is important because what you're really doing is you're setting it so you never have to think about it in the future. Because a lot of our financial clutter creates a lot of mental clutter in our lives. Not only do we worry about money, but all of those things lead to this psychological, this mental, and then ultimately this emotional clutter. Yes, there are the zeros and ones of money, the basic financial principles. But the thing that really gets us into trouble is how we feel about money.
In one of their blog posts, they recommend using apps like BetterHelp or Vanguard in order to automatically pull these investments so that you're not missing out on them. Number 3 is to get out of your bubble. We all have this perception bubble, especially when it comes to money. Josh shares his experience about how when he had more money, he actually felt more broke and was in more debt than when he was making substantially less money, like 90% less money, and somehow was able to give more and contribute more even though he wasn't making as much money. And the reason, he says, is because of his money mindset and the story that he told himself.
I felt more financially insecure as I made more money. Why is that? Well, it has to do with the story we tell ourselves about money. Eventually, at age 30, I walked away from the corporate world and I took a 90% pay cut that first year. 90%. I made $23,000 in 2011. And strangely, I was more financially free that year. And I also contributed more financially and outside of finances as well that year than I had the previous decade. Now, why is that? Well, it has to do with the story that I told myself about money.
And this also includes the feeling of always needing and wanting more. Sometimes it's just that our perception is so out of whack. And when you realign and hone that perception back into something that's a little more close to reality, you might realize that you don't need more money. You just need to be a better steward of the money that you do have. Number 2 is to recalibrate. So this is where we're looking at things like getting yourself out of debt, getting back to that, neutral level at least, to where you're not owing money and you're not digging yourself deeper and deeper into the hole. And also by lessening your needs, downsizing where you need to downsize, minimize where you need to minimize.
Well, the first thing I had to do was obviously reduce my expenses, get down to what was truly essential, live in a house that I could actually afford to live in, that would cost me less, so I could dedicate every dollar that I was saving toward that debt. But also, I needed to make more money. And so I sold everything that wasn't tied down, and I began getting rid of the excess. That was really helpful for the minimalist thing, but it was also great because any extra dollars I made, what did I do with it? I put it toward my debt. But then also, even though I was working a suit and tie job in the corporate world, I started delivering pizzas on the evenings and weekends because I knew I needed to create a little more pain in my life so I'd never go back into debt again. The truth is, we've removed all the inconvenience from our lives. It's similar to removing all of the friction from your life, which sounds great until you realize that without any friction, you lose traction.
Certainly, deprivation is not sustainable. I would never recommend deprivation for life. But it's interesting, when you do temporarily deprive yourself, you start to figure out what's actually important. And some of the things that you were depriving yourself from, actually you realize you didn't need them at all in the first place. I think about Sirius radio. That's the first thing that comes to mind. It was something that I had, I listened to, I cut it out because I wanted to pay off debt, never brought it back because I realized it actually wasn't that important.
And then number 1 is to begin and end with a budget. And I feel like people hear the word budget a lot and they throw it around a lot, and they maybe think that they have a budget, but they don't really have a budget.
The most important thing is to really get a budget together, and that's where it starts. So for me and my wife, we keep a regular budget. We use an app called Every Dollar. There's a ton of free apps out there. That's just our preferred app. It's free. There is a paid version. I like the free version because it makes you do a little bit more work, which creates a little bit more friction when you want to go to the store and buy something. But once we have our dollars allocated for, yes, we make sure that those payments, those savings payments really, that we have scheduled each month are accounted for.
There's a lot of binary thinking that goes on with this, right? It's like, I can either go on a vacation or I can save in a boring fashion for the future, right? We can often do both through budgeting appropriately. Unfortunately, most of the things that we spend our money on don't fall into either one of those categories. We're often spending money on things that we don't need. We're borrowing against our future to buy those things, and quite often we can cut those costs out, and that's how we find money for the vacation we want to take.
Even if you're totally debt-free, the budget is what's going to keep the needle going up. And a lot of us think that we have budgets, or, we talk about budgets as if looking at our finances and maybe knowing kind of where the money is going is the same as budgeting, but really budgeting takes work. It takes effort to set up exactly how much money you're going to allow for each type of purchase, whether it's home purchases or shopping purchases. Really having a budget is the only way to manage where your finances are going and to make sure that the financial dial keeps trending upward. Now, if you're curious about how Matt and I manage our finances, I have another video about that here. And I also have my finance sheets if you'd like to take a look at those down in the description. Now, before we go on, this video is sponsored by Skillshare, and Skillshare is an excellent learning hub for any kind of skill or hobby or career path that you're interested in learning more about and even fully developing. I've been absolutely binging everything from Ali Abdaal. At one point, I had 2 of his courses up in 2 different tabs on my computer, and I was kind of going back and forth between the 2 of them because I couldn't decide which one I wanted to focus on at the time. Probably a terrible way to learn, but I did go through his entire video editing course, which was awesome. I've been using Final Cut Pro for years, but I still was able to walk away with new skills and strategies that I immediately immediately implemented and have already been game-changing in my editing process. With the way that careers and businesses are going more and more online, even the ones that are not totally online are still online, it's just really smart to learn some of these skills, and it's really convenient to be able to learn them all in one place. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Now remember, if you want to hear the full interview, you can hear that over on the Mind Your Home podcast, and I will chat with you guys next week.